There is a specific kind of heat in South Carolina during late July. It is heavy, it is thick, and if you step outside, it feels like you are walking into a warm wall of humidity. But for anyone who lives and breathes high school sports in this state, that heat means only one thing: football is back. Yet, as we stand on the precipice of a new season, the landscape looks almost unrecognizable compared to where we left it last December. We are talking about administrative shakeups, massive realignment, coaches playing musical chairs, and a transfer portal environment that feels closer to the SEC than Friday Night Lights.
It really does feel like the tectonic plates under Palmetto State football have shifted over the winter. If you took a snapshot of the state championship games last year and tried to project this season based on that, you would be completely lost. The changes are systemic. They start at the very top with the people who govern the games, trickle down through the classifications, and land right in the locker rooms with players moving across district lines in ways we have never seen before.
Let's start at the very top, because before a single pad pops, the front office of South Carolina high school sports is undergoing a historic transition. The executive committee of the high school league is moving toward a buyout with their longtime commissioner, who has guided the ship for nearly 2 decades. That is a massive changing of the guard.
It is, and it did not happen in a vacuum. This comes on the heels of some serious political pressure from the State House. Lawmakers actually introduced a bill that would have dissolved the league entirely and handed athletic governance over to a state-run association. A compromise was reached, keeping the league intact but subjecting it to legislative audits and capping future commissioner contracts at 3 years. It is a clear signal that the state government wants more oversight on how high school athletics are run, and the league is adjusting accordingly.
It makes you wonder how much that administrative tension trickles down to the actual alignment of the schools, because the new classification map is wild. We have traditional heavyweights moving down, others moving up, and it completely alters the playoff picture.
The realignment is going to create some absolute bloodbaths in Class 4A. You have Gaffney, Riverside, T, L, Hanna, and Greenville High all dropping down from 5A to 4A. Think about the historical pedigree of those programs. Meanwhile, Class 5A is doing away with its 2-division split. In the past, a powerhouse like Dutch Fork only had to worry about half of the classification to reach the title game. Now, the path to a state championship runs through every single team in 5A. There is no hiding.
And that ripple effect is felt everywhere. Look at Daniel and Blue Ridge dropping to 3A, or Mountain View Prep and Woodruff going down to 2A. It resets the expectations for dozens of communities. And speaking of resets, let's talk about the sidelines. The coaching carousel this offseason looked like a high-speed chase.
The Midlands and the Lowcountry saw some massive moves. You have a state championship-winning coach leaving Chester to take over at White Knoll. You have the defensive coordinator from Dutch Fork taking his first head coaching job at South Florence, replacing a coach who jumped to Sumter, and in Horry County, it feels like half the schools have new leadership. Conway Street, James, North Myrtle Beach, they all brought in new head coaches to rebuild or sustain their programs.
It takes a lot of courage for a coach to step into these rebuilding projects, especially with how volatile rosters have become. That brings us to the most talked about topic of the summer: recruiting and the new transfer rules. It feels like high school football is officially in the portal era.
The high school league introduced a new rule that allows a student-athlete 1 penalty-free transfer, provided it happens before practices officially begin for that sport. On paper, it gives kids more freedom. In practice, it has created what some local coaches are calling the Wild West.
But there is a fascinating local wrinkle to this, especially down on the Grand Strand. 5 major schools down there are what they call red zoned. They are at or above 95% student capacity, which means by law, they cannot accept incoming transfers. So you have coaches who feel like their hands are tied. Their players can leave for other schools, but they cannot bring anyone in to replace them. It creates a very uneven playing field.
It absolutely does. While some schools are locked down, others are loading up. Look at Dutch Fork. They just added 2 key transfers from A, C, Flora, and a pair of standout receivers from their crosstown rival, Irmo. When a defending champion is able to reload like that, The gap between the elite and the rest of the pack only grows wider.
And then you have the recruiting stories that just leave you shaking your head. In the upstate, you had a four-star running back committed to Penn State who flipped to Rutgers, which is big news on its own. But then he decided to reclassify, skip his entire senior year of high school, and enroll early in college. Imagine being his high school coach, planning your entire offensive scheme around a national recruit, and suddenly he is gone before the first snap of the fall.
That is the new reality of the sport. The timeline for these kids is moving so fast. They are looking at the business of college football and realizing that getting to campus early is more valuable than playing one last season with their childhood friends. It is hard to blame the player, but it leaves the high school programs in a really tough spot.
Let's slide into the upstate for a minute because the sheer density of talent up there right now is staggering. If you look at the trenches, Dorman has a sophomore offensive lineman who is already 6'4", 280 pounds, and sitting at the top of the local rankings. A sophomore.
The physical profile of these kids is changing, and the running back position in the upstate is just ridiculous this year. Even with that early departure we just talked about, you still have guys putting up absurd numbers. We are talking about players who averaged nearly 8 yards a carry, scoring 20 to 30 touchdowns in a single season. The depth of talent in Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson counties is as good as any region in the Southeast.
And the quarterback battle is just as intense. We are seeing a lot of transfer quarterbacks making immediate impacts. You have guys moving from one program to another and immediately throwing for nearly 3,000 yards and racking up dozens of college offers. It shows how quickly a team can go from a rebuilder to a contender if they land the right signal caller.
Look at what happened at Westside last year. They started the season 0-4. A start like that usually dooms a team. But they rallied behind a freshman quarterback, won 9 straight games, and made it all the way to the upper state finals. Now that kid is a sophomore with offers from major power conferences. That kind of resilience is what makes high school football so compelling.
It is the ultimate drama. Let's swing down to the coast because the Grand Strand has its own unique flavor this year. The annual Kickoff Classic is returning to the Coastal Carolina campus after some stadium renovations last year. That event is such a staple for the local community. 5 games in one night, right before the official season starts.
It is a great showcase, and those teams are going to need the warm-up because the new regions down there are brutal. The old beach region is gone. Now you have teams like Carolina Forest and Socastee placed in a travel-heavy region with traditional powerhouses from the Charleston area. The bus rides alone are going to be a test of endurance.
And then you have the dynamic between the traditional public schools and the charter schools. In Class 3A, you have a charter program like Atlantic Collegiate Academy grouped with local public schools like Anor and Loris. In the past, those public schools mostly avoided scheduling the charter school. Now, because they are in the same region, they have no choice. They have to play.
That is where the tension lies. Public school coaches often feel that charter schools have an unfair advantage when it comes to drawing players from wider geographic areas. When you force them into the same region, it creates an automatic rivalry, fueled by a lot of off-field debate.
But you have to credit the kids and the coaches on the field. Atlantic Collegiate went from 0-5 to winning out and getting their first playoff victory. That is a coaching staff keeping a team together when things looked bleak.
And look at Anor. They tried a new offensive scheme last year, went 3-8, and now they are going back to their roots. They are running that old-school single-wing offense again. In an era where everyone wants to spread the field and throw it 50 times, there is something beautiful about a team that just wants to line up, run the ball down your throat, and rely on a heavyweight wrestling runner-up to anchor their offensive line.
It is a clash of styles. You have the modern, spread-it-out, transfer-heavy programs on one side and the traditional, community-based ground-and-pound teams on the other. It makes for incredible Friday nights.
It really does. If you look at the final rankings from last season, South Carolina programs are starting to gain national respect. We had multiple teams finishing in the regional top 10. The quality of play in this state has never been higher.
So, when we look at the big picture, what are you most excited to watch as we head into late August?
I think all eyes have to be on Dutch Fork. They are chasing a 5th consecutive state title. Their head coach is already tied for the most championships in state history, and he has his own son playing quarterback for him this year. The narrative write-up for that is just perfect, but with the new alignment, they won't have to play Irmo in the regular season anymore. The path is different, the obstacles are new, but the goal remains the same.
It feels like we are entering an era where high school football is becoming a micro version of college football. The pressure on these coaches to recruit their own hallways, to manage rosters in the face of transfer rules, and to deal with the academic and athletic demands is higher than ever.
It is a double-edged sword. On one hand, the exposure for these kids is fantastic. They have opportunities that previous generations could only dream of. On the other hand, we have to make sure we don't lose the soul of high school sports. The connection to the local community, the pride of representing your hometown, the simple joy of playing under the lights with the kids you grew up with.
That is the delicate balance. As the business of sports creeps lower and lower into the prep ranks, the pure love of the game is what we have to hold on to. But regardless of the rules, the realignments, or the administrative battles, when that clock ticks down to kickoff on August 28th, all of that noise fades away. It just comes down to 11 guys on one side of the ball, 11 on the other, and a community watching from the stands.
And that is why we keep coming back. No matter how much the map changes,